Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Crowd Management Doctor. This is Gil Fried, and these are May and June news stories. A contractual dispute was resolved recently in Santa Clara involving the 49ers. A long-standing dispute between the city of Santa Clara, California, and the San Francisco 49ers over various costs was recently resolved. The primary issues that generated the most media coverage over the dispute that traced itself all the way back to 2017 and 2018 contractual year revolved around pricing of the buffet and how much it cost, but most importantly, policing at Levi's Stadium. The dispute revolved around who should foot the bill as the costs have been steadily increasing for these expenses. I know food's expensive for everyone, but policing is the main area we're focusing in on right now. Originally, the cap was set at $170,000 per game with a 4% annual increase for covering police expense. From the beginning, though, police costs exceeded the threshold by over $75,000 a game. Ever since, the cost has exceeded the threshold for every full season, not counting the COVID shutdown, of course. The cost for police presence has skyrocketed over the years, and the estimate for the 2023-24 season will be $521,494 per game. That is $299,531 over the threshold. That's more than expected. So the new agreement increases the security cost threshold to $360,000 per game. That could mean that the city would be on the hook for around $3 million per year in just police costs. As an example, the team had previously paid for police overtime expense for games such as the Christmas game in 2023. When the team said they wouldn't pay for it anymore, the city was on the hook for over $100,000 just in overtime police cost. The key for this settlement is to examine what the added costs are for police and security presence at a major event. At a certain point, the teams, leagues, venues, municipalities, and others will need to examine how to reduce such costs, as the added burden will eventually fall to voters or ticket buyers who might balk at a significant increase in cost just to pay for security. Security is critical, but the question is always who will pay for it? And we're always debating that question. So when you're working on the front lines, you represent one of the layers of security, and security is very expensive. And we have to deliver the highest quality for our customers, the ones who pay for that service. The New York State and county officials sought this week, and this was a couple weeks ago in May, to reassure attendees and area residents that extensive security measures were being implemented in response to a threat against the Cricket World Cup event that reportedly posted on a pro-ISIS internet platform. So this involved cricket games that were being held all over the East Coast, but primarily in New York City. And they built a venue just for that. The competition has been around since 2007, and they have a number of matches that are going on for the International Cricket Council Men's T20 World Cup that are taking place in the United States, and that session or series is being hosted as long as the United States with the West Indies. At a news conference Wednesday featuring government and law enforcement officials that are closely associated with the tournament and with Nassau County police commissioners and stuff like that, the police commissioner, Patrick Ryder, said that the threats against the event fielded by authorities dated back all the way to April, so months beforehand, and were linked to ISIS-K, also known as Islamic State Khorasan. ISIS-K is an organization that splintered off the original ISIS and has developed a reputation for seeking to attack targets in various countries. Ryder, remember the police commissioner from Nassau County, said that threats began in vague terms, but as it got closer to the event, they became more specific towards the actual game of India versus Pakistan. It did not name the place that was being targeted, just the game. Then all of a sudden they saw a spike the day before the game, and the video that went global, and they're calling for a lone wolf to act out. Now, Ryder said officials were trying to keep the environment in and around the stadium as sterile as we can, as clean as possible. He told reporters that every attendee will have to pass through a magnetometer, the metal detectors. Searches will be conducted on the way in, and no bags will be allowed except for specific situations such as medical needs, in which case they will have to be using a clear bag. In addition, Ryder said no drones will be allowed in Eisenhower Park in East Meadow, New York, where the stadium that they built for the event was being located. No one not clearly attending or staffing the event will be allowed in the park during the day while matches are being held there. And that was on Saturday through June 12th, the Saturday that in the end of May. When you've got a game as big as this, Ryder said, everything is credible. Ryder said on Wednesday of possible threats to the India-Pakistan match, we will go through every fine detail when it comes to security and safety of the residents here in Nassau County. And that's what you want people to say. Luckily, the event went off. There was no incidents. There was no terrorist attack or anything else. So luckily, their planning paid off. French Open bans alcohol in the stands after fans were called out for rowdiness. The French Open has banned fans from having alcohol in the stands at the Grand Slam tournament in Paris after bad fan conduct. Unfortunately, it caused the tournament director to say enough is enough. The tournament director, Emile Morisemo, said that fans now are banned from having alcohol while attending matches. In another part of her effort to rein in the rowdiness at what is supposedly a genteel sport, Morisemo, who won 2 Grand Slam titles as a player more than a decade ago, herself said security would be tightened around the site on day 5 of the major tournament held annually in southwest Paris. Until now, alcohol was allowed in the stands. Not in every stand, not in the VIP section of Shatir is the name of the area, for example, the tournament director said. But now it's everyone, everywhere. It is not unprecedented in sports. Just one more extreme example. For example, drinking alcohol while in view of the field was banned from soccer matches in Britain nearly 40 years ago, following years of fan violence. So you go to a game, you don't have to drink while in front of the pitch. You can go into the alleyways. So now you go to a game and the stadium concourse are packed with people guzzling beers. The ban follows that kind of concern about the behavior of those watching competition. And if you keep them maybe in the concourse way, maybe that will help improve things, but there's no guarantee because they could drink a lot at home, they could drink a lot in the parking lot, they could drink at the bars, and then bring their drunken atmosphere to the game, unfortunately. It's just one more thing we have to deal with. Fan rush Wembley Stadium and try to get past security out of the Champions League final between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. Shocking footage has now showed a large group of people charging towards the iconic London Stadium and appearing to attempt to enter via the Club Wembley entrance before being pushed back and turned away by police and security. To add to the mayhem, a series of pitch invaders were also seen running across the turf unchallenged after kickoff. One of the people who ran onto the pitch stopped to take a selfie with Real Madrid star Vinicius Jr. 2 invaders were quickly removed by Wembley Stadium security, but then another person ran onto the field to visible annoyance of some of the players. It probably was annoyance also to some of the fans too. It took 4 security staff to apprehend the last invader, marking a shaky start to what would be a huge match. The incident happened despite a $5 million ring of steel defense, which was put in place by officials to avoid a repeat of England's Euro 2020 Day of Shame. Now, that Day of Shame is something that you could see on a Netflix special called Attack at Wembley. Some can be seen actually getting inside the Club Wembley entrance as they break past security before turning around and running away. As well as this, the video outside the stadium showed what appeared to be fans fighting on the ground. It was not clear what they were clashing over, but they were fighting on the ground. To combat this, police mounted on horses rushed in as reinforcements, with riot police also seen marching down the street towards the fans. Before kickoff, it was revealed that the Football Association had pumped $5 million, or £5 million, into the security operations at Wembley with this ring of steel that I previously mentioned. And it involved thousands of stewards and enhanced ticket checks. It was designed to be the largest security operation in the stadium's history. Extra policing and security, as well as no alcohol ban signs that they put in place in multiple languages around the stadium, were in place for crowd safety purposes. The idea was to avoid a repeat of the shameful scenes that marred the Euro 2020 finals between England and Italy, with fans who didn't have tickets. I mean, there were thousands of them trying to storm the stands, and which was turned into, as I said, a Netflix special called Attack on Wembley. Now, England, they used the green guide and the purple guide. They're considered the gold standard, and they still have issues. And if you look at Attack on Wembley, you'll see a number of those incidences, unfortunately. Wembley that night was a scene of drinking and drug-fueled chaos, getting into fights. The previous two Champions League finals in Paris and Istanbul were also overshadowed by major logistical problems outside the stadiums, leading to chaotic and dangerous scenes, something the Football Association has been desperate to avoid. In Paris, crowd control descended into chaos at the Stade de France as a large buildup of fans were unable to gain access in time for kickoff. More than 2,500 security stewards had been deployed, the most Wembley had ever seen. The investment has been used to solidify the stadium's security. This is the £5 million investment to secure the stadium's security infrastructure, including the increasing the strength of all Wembley doors with an additional magnetic lock system to ensure there's no repeat of people successfully ripping them off their hinges, which is what happened in 2020. We're not looking at 100 years ago. This is 2020 when they had ripped them off the hinges. So they tried to reinforce those doors. Additional fences and gates had been delivered throughout Wembley's perimeter, while the area underneath the iconic Olympic steps had been significantly bolstered since the Euro final in 2020. A significant part of the money has been spent on improving CCTV, the closed caption television, in and around Wembley, with a second security control room big enough to house around 18 officers that had been opened with specific remit of monitoring events outside the stadium's perimeter, including tube stations and local pubs. So you have a lot of cameras within this venue. Now you're going to have all these cameras outside the venue that are monitoring blocks and blocks away. The FA has also invested in providing additional body cameras for event stewards. One of the criticisms of the security operation for the Euro 2020 final was the apprehensive approach from sections of the steward staff that day. Although many had since insisted they did not have the level of expertise to handle the sort of intoxicated fans that arrived at Wembley intending to cause trouble, you can't just say, hey, look, I'm not trained. You have to ask for the training, and we have to provide that training to you. So that was one of the big issues that was raised. The FA insists that they have since improved the training and vetted strategy regarding steward section for Wembley events. Thus, hopefully, it's going to deal with this, but that was saying that was seen in this ring of steel that they were trying to do to make sure it's safe as possible. Addressing the attempts to gain entry to the stadium, a Met police spokesperson said the force had made 53 arrests, and the majority of those arrests were for attempts to breach security. It was basically 48 arrests were for breaching the perimeter. Videos shared online showing groups running into entrances do not necessarily represent successful attempts to enter the stadium. There are typically multiple further levels of security beyond an initial entrance, so you have to go through one, then the other. Officers remain in the area outside the stadium and will be able to deal decisively with any criminality, is what the police department said, and that's what they were trying to do. A lot of arrests, this thing that's going to keep occurring. The next story deals with how Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium dealt with a water outage hours before a soccer match. Multiple water main breaks in Atlanta resulted in chaos that seeped into the corners of societal function, yet impacted only slightly an Atlanta United Football Club Major League Soccer match at Mercedes-Benz Stadium thanks to, you guessed it, careful planning. The stadium managed to welcome fans despite the city being hit with a water outage just hours before the match against visiting Charlotte. Dietmar Exler, the stadium's chief operating officer, said a plan was already in place to deal with a lack of water. It's an absolute necessity to be prepared, Exler said. We do 4 to 5 tabletops a year, tabletop exercises, which are designed to give you the opportunity to say, what if? And they bring in a lot of agencies like the police, fire, EMS, Georgia World Congress Center, Fulton County, and we get in a room and for a couple hours talk through all the different scenarios, is what Exler said. Officials said they had just completed a 5-hour scenario with city and public health officials on how to respond to handle a water outage inside the stadium. That's why you do tabletop exercises. You get used to it, and when the incident happens, it's like, oh, I know what to do because I've went through this with all my colleagues. We know what to handle. So Exler said, we come to find out that our scenario came true about 40% of the time. And they ended up saying that they're confident that knowing that the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is the most prepared stadium in North America just because they're open so much. They have so many events. They have to keep practicing all these different tabletops. At the game, hand sanitizers were placed in restrooms, and the stadium did not sell fountain drinks. They still sold beer, but just not fountain drinks. Employees were required to boil water to wash their hands. So you have to think about the fans, but also all the employees as well. Fans get prison sentence, and that's beyond just the stadium ban, for racial abuse of Real Madrid player in June of 2024. Stadium bans are not uncommon. A lot of times that's a punishment for sports spectators who fail to meet their behavioral expectations, and they might violate the fan code of conduct or stuff like that. But a prison sentence? Let's see. 3 fans have been sentenced to 8 months in prison and banned from stadiums for 2 years for racially abusing Real Madrid player Vinicius Jr. at Mestalla. As reported by ESPN, the incident took place during Real Madrid's 1-0 La Liga defeat to Valencia and sparked a worldwide uproar after the Brazil star identified an individual in the crowd who had been racially abusing him, causing the game to be suspended. The 3 fans were found guilty of a crime against moral integrity, aggravated by racially motivated discrimination, under Article 173.1 of Spain's Criminal Code. It is believed to be the first verdict of its kind in Spain. The fans were sentenced to an additional requirement as well, and that included the initial 12 months in prison, but that was reduced by 1/3 to 8 months after a principle which sees reduced punishment for defenders who accept criminal responsibility. So because they said, yes, we did it, they shortened the prison sentence there. They also received a 3-year stadium ban, reduced to 2 years for the same reason, and will have to pay costs. This is a new thing. Maybe if we start having more significant punishments and more laws that will impact people, maybe that will change behavior of some of the fans. A chemical agent at Baltimore Pride event deemed to be mace, but it injured 3 people, police said. The chemical agent released at the Baltimore Pride event on Saturday evening, June 15th, was determined to be mace. At first, they didn't know what it was. Just people were going down and they were having issues with it. And you always have to be careful if it's a terrorist attack. But this ended up being mace. And it ended up injuring 3 people, Baltimore police confirmed. During the annual Pride Parade and block party, a fight broke out between 2 groups in front of the main music stage near North Avenue and Charles Street around 8:30 p.m. When the mace was sprayed, police said that's when they had to respond. 3 people came into contact with the mace and were treated and released at a local hospital, according to the police department. Fireworks were set off around the same time, which led to a large crowd fleeing, causing several injuries, police said. So some people thought it was okay, there's maybe a terrorist attack, there's gunfire. When you have a lot of different things going on, people could take a look at it at a different perspective, and that could unfortunately lead to more injuries. Texas A&M fans kicked out of College World Series for taunting Florida coach about bat boy murder-suicide. Two Texas A&M University baseball fans were ejected from a College World Series game for taunting Florida's baseball coach over his peripheral ties to a double murder and suicide 3 years ago. As reported by NBC News, the incident unfolded during the first inning of a rain-delayed Texas Aggies versus Florida Gators game at Charles Schwab Field in Omaha, Nebraska. A close play at third base went against Florida, and ESPN cameras were focused on the Gator dugout to see whether Florida would challenge the umpire's call. But what they captured were two men wearing A&M shirts leaning into Florida's dugout and screaming at the Gators coach, Kevin O'Sullivan, before stadium security people took them away. According to the Gainesville Sun, the taunts were related to a May 2021 death of Rex Reinhardt, 14, and Brody Reinhardt, 11. Brody regularly served as a bat boy for the Florida team. Those folks were banned and barred from the stadium, so they will no longer be attending any more games, the police said. The future of the College World Series attendance will be decided by the ballpark and whether or not they will allow these fans back in, and also law enforcement and the NCAA, the stadium officials said. So if you go to a game, just enjoy and have fun. We don't need any taunts or anything else like that. And if there is, that's where we have to, as patron leaders, step up. The FBI report reveals what most active shooter situations have in common. A new report by the FBI documenting where active shooter incidents happen in the U.S. in 2023 reveals that open spaces, which include roads, neighborhoods, parks, and outdoor venues, are the places where victims are most likely to be targeted. Stadiums, arenas, concerts will all fit into there, as well as possible sites. Federal investigators said there were 48 active shooter incidents. That's quite a bit. Those are what happened last year in 2023 across 26 states, resulting in 105 deaths and 139 injuries. California, which has some of the toughest gun control laws in the country, led the way with 8 incidents. They were followed by Texas and Washington State, each with 4 incidents. 28 of last year's incidents happened in open spaces, followed by 14 in commerce settings, which could be stores or stuff like that. It also could be an entertainment venue, like a bar or something like that. And then 3 occurred in education settings, 2 in healthcare, and 1 in residential. The deadliest shooting unfolded October 25th when 18 people were killed by a gunman at a bowling alley in a bar in Lewiston, Maine. Before he was found dead 2 days later from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, we did not know who it was or what it was. We were trying to find the person, but that was just such a huge tragedy and just senseless. Of the 49 shooters involved in 2023 incidents, all of them were male except one who was identified as both female and transgender, according to the FBI. The perpetrators were between the age of 17 and 72. That's a huge range. And 43 handguns were used in the attacks, followed by 16 rifles and 1 shotgun. The FBI says the release of the report Monday is to provide an overview of active shooter incidents to help law enforcement. It also will help other first responders, and it'll help the public better understand the levels of threat associated with active shooter incidents. In 2023, the FBI designated 48 shootings as active shooter incidents. Although incidents decreased by 4% from 2022, when there were 50 incidents, the number of active shooter incidents has increased 60% since 2019 when there were 30 incidents. The FBI designated 229 active shooter incidents from 2019 to 2023. 229. One is too many. 229 is ridiculous. This represents an 89% increase in active shooter incidents. 121 was the number that they had from the previous 5-year period. 6 climate protesters ran onto the 18th green and sprayed powder, delaying the finish of the PGA Tour event. 6 climate protesters stormed the 18th green while the leaders of the tournament were lining up their putts for the final hole of regulation play at the PGA Tour's Travelers Championship on this past Sunday, and they were spraying smoke and powder and delaying the finish for around 5 minutes. It wasn't a long delay, but enough of a delay. The protesters waved smoke bombs that left white and red residue on the putting surface before Scottie Scheffler, Tom Kim, and Akshay Bhatia finished their round. Some wore white t-shirts with the words "No Golf on a Dead Planet" in black lettering on the front. "I was scared for my life," Bhatia said. "I didn't even really know what was happening. But thankfully the cops were there and kept us safe because that's just weird stuff." I agree with this sentiment. The PGA Tour issued a statement thanking the Cromwell Police Department for their quick and decisive action and noting that there was no damage to the 18th green that affected either the end of regulation or the playoff hole. Scheffler, who was arrested during a traffic stop at a PGA Championship, also praised the officers. So that was nice of him that he had no ill will after his stop. Extinction Rebellion, an activist group with a history of disrupting events around the world, claimed responsibility for the protest. In a statement emailed to the Associated Press, the group blamed climate change for an electrical storm that injured 2 people at a home near the course on Saturday. What does that have to do with the golf tournament? Who knows, but they're protesters. The crowd surrounding the 18th green heckled the protesters by yelling profanities and cheering the police to intervene. After the players putted out in regulation, workers with leaf blowers came out to clean off the remaining powder that was left on the green. All right, so those are the primary news stories. There were some other ones. For example, the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. Over 1,300 people died this year at the Hajj event, a religious event in Mecca. Most of it was climate related. A lot of them were Egyptians who went over there with tour groups, and the tour groups just abandoned them basically with no place to go. And so they're out there in the heat, and it's a heat wave going on there, and they died from exposure to the heat. So heat exhaustion, heat-related concerns are a major concern with the hot weather that has been affecting a large part of the world. That's it for the news stories for this May and June of 2024. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of the summer, and be safe out there. Take care.